The rain came down in sheets, slapping against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nathan Caldwell's Seattle mansion, a sleek fortress of glass and steel perched on a hill overlooking Puget Sound. The city's skyline flickered in the distance, blurred by the storm, but inside, the air was heavier, thicker, with something unspoken. Lena Carter stood in the foyer, her worn canvas bag slung over one shoulder, her braids damp from the downpour. She was 32, slight but sturdy, with eyes that carried the weight of too many homes that never felt like hers. This was her first day as the nanny number 15. She'd been told for Nathan's twin daughters, Zoe and Mia, 6 years old and silent as ghosts since their mother's death 2 years ago. The butler, a wiry man named Harold with a face like an old oak, took her coat without a word, his gaze flickering with something like pity. "They're upstairs," he said, voice low, as if afraid to wake something. Lena nodded, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished marble as she followed him up the winding staircase. The house was a paradox, all sharp angles and modern opulence, yet it felt hollow, like a museum for a life no one lived anymore. She'd read the file Zoe and Mia Caldwell, selective mutism, night terrors, a string of nannies who'd quit after weeks or even days. Therapists, doctors, none had cracked the shell around the girl's grief. Lena wasn't sure she could either, but she knew what it was to be a child no one could reach. She'd been that child, shuffled through foster homes, her voice locked away until someone, a teacher, long gone now, had seen her. That was why she was here, not for the paycheck, though it was generous, but for the chance to be that someone for someone else. The nursery was at the end of a long hallway, its door slightly ajar, spilling soft light onto the hardwood. Lena paused, hearing nothing but the rain's relentless drum. She knocked gently, then pushed the door open. The room was a child's dream, bookshelves stuffed with colorful spines, a canopy bed draped in white linen, a corner piled with stuffed animals. But it was the stillness that hit her first, the kind that wasn't peaceful but heavy, like air before a lightning strike. Zoe and Mia sat on the floor, cross-legged, facing each other, their identical faces pale under dark curls. They were mirror images, down to the way their hands rested on their knees, but their eyes were vacant, staring through each other. A sketchbook lay open between them, its pages blank. Lena lowered herself to the floor, keeping her distance. "Hey," she said softly, her voice a low hum, like she was coaxing a stray cat. "I'm Lena. I'm gonna be around for a bit, if that's okay." No response. Zoe's fingers twitched, but neither girl looked up. Lena didn't push. She pulled a small notebook from her bag, one she always carried, and started sketching a simple outline of a tree, its branches curling like question marks. She didn't look at the girls. Just let the scratch of her pencil fill the silence. Minutes passed, maybe 10, before Mia's head tilted, just a fraction, her eyes catching the paper. Lena kept drawing, adding leaves, slow and deliberate. Zoe shifted next, scooting an inch closer. It wasn't much, but it was something. Downstairs, Nathan Caldwell stood in his office, a sterile room of glass and chrome, staring at a monitor that glowed with stock charts and emails he hadn't answered. At 38, he was a tech tycoon, the kind Seattle worshipped founder of a cybersecurity firm that had made him a billionaire before he was 30. But wealth couldn't fix the hole in his chest, the one left when his wife, Elise, died in a car accident. Her blood alcohol level, a quiet scandal he'd buried with her. The twins hadn't spoken to him since, not really. He'd tried therapists, specialists, every solution money could buy, but their silence was a wall he couldn't climb. He ran a hand through his dark hair, his jaw tight. The new nanny was a risk. No degree, no formal training, just a resume patched together with community center work and a reference from a social worker who swore Lena was special. Nathan didn't believe in special. He believed in results, and so far, none had come. He glanced at the clock, 7:42 p.m. He'd meant to check on the girls earlier, but a call from Shanghai had derailed him. Now, the house felt too quiet, even with the storm raging outside. He pushed away from his desk and headed upstairs, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. The nursery door was open when he reached it, and what he saw stopped him cold. Lena was on the floor, her back to the wall, humming softly a low, steady melody that seemed to weave into the rain's rhythm. Zoe and Mia were closer now. Not touching her, but near enough to feel deliberate. Mia held a crayon, her small hand hovering over Lena's notebook, where a tree now bloomed with green and gold leaves. Zoe's eyes were fixed on Lena's face, not with trust but with something softer than fear. Nathan's chest tightened, not with relief but with something sharper intrusion. This was his space, his daughter's, his grief. Who was this woman, a stranger, sitting in their world like she belonged? "What the hell are you doing?" His voice cut through the room, sharp as a blade. Lena's humming stopped, her shoulders stiffening, but she didn't flinch. The twins did, though Zoe's crayon dropped, and Mia's eyes snapped to the floor. Lena turned slowly, her gaze meeting his, steady, unafraid. "I'm sitting with them," she said, her voice calm but firm, like she was stating a fact he'd missed. "They're okay. They're drawing." Nathan stepped forward, his hands clenched. "You're not supposed to be in here like this. You're the nanny, not their mother." The word hung in the air, heavy with ghosts. Lena's eyes flickered, not with guilt but with something deeper, something that saw through him. "I know I'm not," she said quietly. "But they're scared, Mr. Caldwell. Zoe had a nightmare last night. Mia hasn't eaten since breakfast. They didn't want to be alone." Her words landed like stones, each one heavy with truth he didn't want to hear. He took another step, his voice rising. "You don't get to decide what they need. You don't know them." Lena stood now, slow, deliberate, her notebook still in hand. "I know what it's like to be left," she said, her voice low but piercing. "I know what it's like to wait for someone to show up and mean it. I'm here because they asked me to stay." Nathan's jaw tightened, his hands trembling with a mix of rage and shame. He didn't know why he did it later. He'd replay the moment 100 times, hating himself, but his hand moved before his mind could stop it. The slap was sharp, a crack that echoed off the walls. Lena staggered, her hand flying to her cheek, but she didn't cry out. Her eyes locked on his, stunned, not by the pain but by the betrayal of it. The twins froze, Zoe's breath hitching, Mia's hands curling into fists. "I don't care what you think you know," Nathan growled, his voice shaking now. "You're fired. Get out." Lena didn't move at first, her hand still pressed to her cheek, her breath steadying. Then she nodded, not in defeat, but in resolve. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She knelt down, ignoring Nathan, and looked at the girls. "I'm sorry I have to go," she said softly. "But you're stronger than you know. Keep drawing, okay?" Mia's lip trembled, but she nodded. Zoe clutched the crayon tighter, her eyes wet. Lena stood, picked up her notebook, and walked past Nathan without another word. He didn't stop her. The rain seemed louder now, pounding against the windows as she descended the stairs. Harold, waiting in the foyer, saw the red mark on her cheek, and froze, his eyes widening. "Miss Carter," he started, but she shook her head, silencing him. She grabbed her bag and stepped out into the storm, the drizzle cold against her skin. She didn't look back. Upstairs, Nathan stood in the nursery, his breath ragged. The room felt smaller now, the air heavier. He looked at the twins, expecting tears, but they were still, their faces blank again, like shutters slamming shut. The sketchbook lay open on the floor, Zoe's crayon abandoned beside it. He moved closer, his throat tight. The drawing was simple, a shadowy figure with long braids, standing under a tree, her hands outstretched. Beneath it, in wobbly letters, Zoe had written, "Safe shadow." Nathan's knees buckled. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. 14 nannies, countless therapists, and yet this woman, this stranger, had reached them in a way he hadn't, and he'd struck her. Shame curled in his chest, sharp and unrelenting. On the nightstand, a folded piece of paper caught his eye. He opened it, his hands unsteady. Lena's handwriting was neat, deliberate. If you can't be their anchor, don't sink the ones who try. No signature, no accusation, just truth. He read it again, then again, the words burning into him. Down the hall, Harold appeared, his voice soft but firm. Sir, she didn't touch anything she shouldn't have. The girls begged her to stay. Zoe was shaking. Mia wouldn't let go of her hand. Nathan didn't respond. He looked at the drawing again, then at his daughters, still silent, still watching him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his own failure, not as a CEO, but as a father. Outside, Lena walked down the long driveway, the rain soaking through her jacket. The iron gates loomed ahead, their bars slick and gleaming. She didn't cry, though her cheek throbbed, a dull reminder of the line she'd crossed not with the girls, but with Nathan's fear. She'd survived worse than a slap. Foster homes that locked her in closets. A sister who'd walked away. A world that told her she was too broken to fix anything. But those girls, their small hands reaching for her notebook, had stirred something she hadn't felt in years: purpose. She stopped at the gate, her fingers brushing the cold metal. Seattle stretched out below, its lights flickering through the mist. She could leave, catch a bus to the community center where she volunteered, start over again. But the image of Zoe's drawing burned in her mind, and something else, a melody, one she'd hummed to the girls, a lullaby from a foster mother who hadn't stayed. Lena pulled her jacket tighter and started walking, not toward the bus stop but back toward the city's heart, where she'd find answers, not for Nathan, but for the girls who'd called her their shadow. Back in the mansion, Nathan sat alone in his office, the scotch bottle untouched on his desk. The note lay beside it, its words louder than the storm outside. He thought of Elise, her laughter, her spirals, the way she'd slipped through his fingers. He thought of the twins, their silence a mirror of his own. And he thought of Lena, her calm defiance, her willingness to sit in the dark with his daughters when he couldn't. He picked up the phone, his fingers hovering over the keys. Harold appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "She's gone, sir," he said. Nathan nodded, his voice hoarse. "I know. I made a mistake." Harold didn't disagree, but his silence said enough. Nathan looked out the window, the rain blurring the world beyond. Somewhere out there, Lena was walking away, carrying a piece of his daughter's trust with her. And for the first time in years, Nathan Caldwell felt something other than control, a flicker of regret, and a need to make it right. The Seattle sky was a bruised gray, heavy with the promise of another storm, as Lena Carter stepped out of the community center in Capitol Hill, her canvas bag slung over her shoulder, still damp from the night before. The center was a squat brick building, its walls covered in murals of sunflowers and outstretched hands, a stark contrast to the polished steel of Nathan Caldwell's mansion. Lena had spent the morning teaching a music class to teens, her voice guiding them through chords on a beat-up guitar, the kind of work that kept her grounded when the world felt like it was slipping. It had been 3 days since she'd walked out of the Caldwell estate, the sting of Nathan's slap still a faint pulse on her cheek, though the bruise was fading. She hadn't gone back, hadn't called. But the memory of Zoe and Mia's faces small, fragile, their eyes holding onto her like she was an anchor, kept her awake at night. She'd left a note for Nathan, words she'd written in a rush, not expecting them to matter. If you can't be their anchor, don't sink the ones who try. She didn't know if he'd read it, or if he'd tossed it into the fireplace. What she did know was that she couldn't walk away from those girls. Not entirely. Not yet. The community center was her refuge, a place where she could pour her heart into kids who reminded her of herself at their age, lost, angry, waiting for someone to stay. But today, as she locked the classroom door, a shadow fell across her path, one that wasn't cast by the clouds. "Lena?" The voice was soft, hesitant, but it hit like a punch to the gut. Lena froze, her key still in the lock, her breath catching. She knew that voice, even after 12 years. She turned slowly, and there she was, Tara Simmons, her older sister, standing on the cracked sidewalk, her hands twisting the strap of a faded denim purse. Tara was thinner than Lena remembered, her once vibrant curls dulled by time, her eyes carrying a weariness that mirrored Lena's own but felt foreign. The last time they'd seen each other, Tara was 19, walking out of their foster home with a backpack and a promise to come back for Lena. She never did. Lena was 11, left to navigate a system that chewed up kids like her and spat them out broken. Now, Tara stood there, her lips parting as if to say something, but Lena spoke first, her voice low, sharp. "What are you doing here?" Tara flinched, her hands tightening on the purse. "I heard you were in Seattle. I saw your name in a newsletter. About the center. I just wanted to see you." Lena's jaw tightened, her fingers curling into fists. "You don't get to just show up, Tara. Not after you left me." Tara's eyes dropped to the ground, her voice barely audible. "I know. I was young, Lena. I was scared. I didn't know how to take care of you." Lena stepped forward, her voice trembling with a rage she'd buried for years. "You didn't try. You promised me. And then you were gone." I waited. "Do you know what that does to a kid?" Tara's eyes welled, but she didn't look away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm here now. I don't need you now." Before Tara could respond, Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a text from the center's coordinator, but the name on the screen stopped her cold. Nathan Caldwell. The message was brief. "Can we talk?" I was wrong. "The girls need you." Lena stared at the words, her heart pounding. She wanted to delete it, to walk away from the mansion and its ghosts. But Zoe's drawing safe shadow flashed in her mind, and she knew she couldn't. She shoved the phone back in her pocket, ignoring Tara, who still stood there, waiting. "I have to go," Lena said, her voice flat. Tara nodded, her expression a mix of hope and defeat. "I'm staying at the motel on Pine Street, if you change your mind." Lena didn't answer. She walked away, the weight of her sister's reappearance pressing against the ache of Nathan's apology, both pulling her in directions she wasn't ready to go. The Caldwell mansion loomed against the evening sky, its glass walls reflecting the last streaks of daylight. Harold met Lena at the door, his face softer than before, almost relieved. "They're in the garden," he said, gesturing toward the back of the house. Lena followed the path, her sneakers crunching on gravel, until she reached the small courtyard where a willow tree drooped over a stone bench. Zoe and Mia sat there, bundled in jackets, their faces pale but alert. They were humming, a faint, uneven melody that stopped when they saw her. Mia's eyes widened, and Zoe's hands clutched a sketchbook. Lena knelt in front of them, her voice gentle. "Hey, you two. I heard you've been keeping busy." Mia nodded, her lips trembling. But it was Zoe who spoke, her voice a whisper. The first words Lena had heard from her. "You left." The accusation was soft, but it cut deep. Lena's throat tightened. "I didn't want to," she said, "but I'm here now. Is that okay?" Mia reached out, her small hand brushing Lena's, and Zoe nodded, her eyes wet but steady. Lena opened her notebook, pulling out a new page. "Want to make something together?" she asked. The girls scooted closer, and Lena started humming again, a lullaby she'd learned in a foster home, one that had calmed her own nightmares. The melody wove through the air, and slowly, Zoe began to draw, her crayon tracing the outline of a bird. Nathan watched from the kitchen window, his hands gripping the counter. He hadn't slept since Lena left, the image of his hand striking her replaying in his mind like a loop he couldn't stop. He wasn't that man, or he hadn't thought he was. Elise's death had broken him, left him grasping for control in a world that kept slipping away. The twins' silence, their refusal to let him in, had been a daily reminder of his failure. And then Lena, with her quiet strength, had walked into their lives and done what he couldn't. He'd lashed out, not because she was wrong, but because she was right. The note she'd left was taped to his desk, its words a quiet indictment. He stepped outside, his steps hesitant, and stopped a few feet from the bench. "Lena," he said, his voice rough. She looked up. her expression guarded but not cold. "Mr. Caldwell." He winced at the formality. "I was wrong," he said, the words heavy. "I reacted out of fear, not reason. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." Lena studied him, her hand still resting on Mia's sketchbook. "Apologies don't erase things," she said. "But they're a start." Nathan nodded, his jaw tight. "The girls need you. Not as a nanny, but as someone who stays. Will you come back?" Lena looked at the twins, their small faces turned toward her, and felt the weight of their trust. "On one condition," she said. "No cameras in their rooms, no yelling when they're scared. And you sit with them every day, even if it's just for a minute." Nathan's eyes softened, not with relief, but with something closer to respect. "Done," he said. That night, Lena stayed at the mansion, in a guest room with a view of the Sound. The girls were asleep, their breathing steady for the first time in weeks, according to Harold. Lena sat on the bed, her notebook open, sketching the bird Zoe had started. The melody she'd hummed earlier lingered in her mind, a tether to a past she'd tried to bury. Tara's face kept creeping in, her sister's voice echoing, "I'm here now." Lena didn't know if she could forgive, didn't know if she wanted to. But the girls' trust, their small hands reaching for her, had stirred something she couldn't ignore. She wasn't just here for them, she was here for herself, too, to prove she could stay when others hadn't. The next morning, she found the twins in the kitchen, eating oatmeal under Harold's watchful eye. Zoe handed her a new drawing, a tree with two birds, one labeled Lena, the other us. Lena smiled, tucking it into her notebook. "We're gonna need more crayons," she said, and Mia giggled, a sound so rare it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. But the calm didn't last. That afternoon, as Lena helped the girls plant marigolds in the garden, Harold appeared with an envelope, his face grim. "This came from Mr. Caldwell," he said, handing it to her. Lena opened it, her heart sinking. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no signature. "She's not who she seems." The words were cold, deliberate, a warning that felt like a blade pressed to her spine. She glanced at the girls, oblivious as they dug in the dirt, and then at the house, where Nathan stood in his office, unaware. Lena folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. She'd survived too much to let a shadow scare her off, but something told her this was only the beginning. Tara's return, Nathan's apology, the girls' fragile trust it was all a delicate thread, and someone, somewhere, was pulling at it, waiting for it to snap. Back at the community center that evening, Lena led her music class, her fingers strumming the guitar as the teens followed along. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying the letter, Tara's face, the girls' drawings. One of the teens, a girl named Jade with a shaved head and a guarded stare, lingered after class. "You okay, Miss Lena?" she asked, her voice sharp but curious. Lena forced a smile. "Just thinking too much." Jade nodded, like she understood. "People always think they know you. They don't." Lena looked at her, seeing a mirror of her own teenage self, defiant, wounded, waiting for someone to prove they'd stay. "You're right," Lena said. "But sometimes, you gotta show them who you are anyway." Jade shrugged, but her eyes softened, and Lena felt a spark of connection. Another thread she couldn't let break. When she returned to the mansion, Nathan was waiting in the living room, a glass of water in his hand instead of scotch. "The girls asked for you at bedtime," he said. "They wanted you to hum that song again." Lena nodded, her heart lifting despite the weight of the day. She climbed the stairs, the letter still in her pocket, and found Zoe and Mia curled up in their canopy bed, their sketchbooks open. She sat between them, humming the lullaby, her voice steady even as her mind raced. The girls' breathing slowed, their hands resting near hers, and for a moment, the world felt still. But outside, the storm clouds gathered again, and Lena knew that whatever was coming, whether from Tara, the letter, or something darker, she'd have to face it. Not just for the girls, but for the part of herself she was only beginning to reclaim. The Seattle skyline glittered under a rare, clear night, its lights sharp against the dark. But inside the newly opened Carter Caldwell Youth Haven, the air was thick with tension. Lena Carter stood in the community room, a converted warehouse space in the heart of Pioneer Square, its brick walls lined with colorful murals painted by the kids who'd found refuge here. The haven had been her dream, born from late-night talks with Nathan Caldwell after she'd returned to care for his twin daughters, Zoe and Mia. It was a place for youth, foster kids, runaways, anyone who'd slipped through the cracks to find safety, not through rigid programs, but through trust, art, and someone who stayed. Tonight, though, the haven felt like a battlefield. Lena held a crumpled newspaper, its headline screaming, "Tech Tycoon's Charity Under Fire. Unqualified Caregiver Raises Questions." The article was a knife, slicing into her past foster homes. No degree, a mysterious rise to running a youth center. It hinted at negligence, suggesting the haven was a vanity project for Nathan, bankrolled by his billions, with Lena as its unqualified figurehead. She knew who was behind it. Victor Marshall, Nathan's former business partner, a man whose smile was all teeth and whose grudges ran deeper than Puget Sound. Lena tossed the paper onto a table, her jaw tight. She'd survived worse than gossip. But this wasn't just about her. It was about the kids, the haven, and the fragile trust she'd built with Zoe and Mia. The letter she'd received days ago. "She's not who she seems" had been the first warning shot. Now, the war was public. Nathan paced the room, his phone buzzing with messages from his PR team. At 38, he was used to corporate battles, but this was personal. Victor had been his friend once, a coder who'd helped build his cybersecurity empire before jealousy and a failed deal turned them into enemies. Victor's company, Marshall Tech, was bleeding clients while Nathan's thrived, and now Victor was hitting where it hurt, Nathan's daughters, and the haven. "He's got nothing concrete," Nathan said, stopping to face Lena. "Just rumors and insinuations. My lawyers are on it." Lena shook her head, her braids swaying. "It's not about proof, Nathan. It's about doubt. They're saying I'm not fit to be here, that you're reckless for trusting me. That hurts the kids more than us." She glanced at the corner where Zoe and Mia sat, their small hands clutching crayons, drawing furiously on a shared sketchbook. The twins had started speaking in short bursts since Lena's return, their voices like fragile buds breaking through frost. But this media storm could silence them again. Lena walked over, kneeling beside them. "What's this one?" she asked, her voice soft. Mia pointed to a drawing of 3 figures under a stormy sky, one with braids labeled Lena, holding hands with 2 smaller ones. "You're keeping the rain away," Mia whispered. Zoe nodded, her eyes fierce. "Don't let them take you." Lena's throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, brushing a curl from Zoe's face. The next morning, the haven buzzed with urgency. Lena met with Sarah Newen, the center's outreach coordinator, a wiry woman with a knack for navigating bureaucracy. Sarah's desk was piled with files, intake forms, volunteer records, everything the haven needed to prove its legitimacy. "They're demanding an audit," Sarah said, pushing her glasses up. "Background checks, certifications, the works. Victor's people leaked a document claiming you falsified your credentials." Lena's blood ran cold. "I never claimed credentials," she said. "I've been upfront about that. No degree, just experience." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "I know, but they've got something, a forged volunteer form with your name, dated before you started here. It's sloppy, but it's enough to make people question." Lena's mind flashed to the letter, its typed threat. Victor was playing dirty, planting lies to unravel everything she'd built. She thought of Jade, a 16-year-old who'd arrived at the haven 2 months ago. All sharp edges and guarded eyes. Her story, a mirror of Lena's own foster homes. Betrayal. A fire in her that no one knew how to handle. Jade had started opening up, sketching birds and humming along to Lena's guitar. If the haven closed, Jade would be sent back to a system that had already failed her. Lena couldn't let that happen. Nathan called an emergency meeting in his office, a glass-walled space overlooking the sound. The team, Lena, Sarah, and Dr. Emily Torres, a retired child psychologist who'd joined the Havens board, sat around a sleek table. Nathan's lawyer, Marcus Reed, was on speakerphone, his voice crisp. "We've traced the forged document to a shell company linked to Marshall Tech," Marcus said. "It's enough to counter their claims, but we need to go public. Control the narrative." Lena hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her notebook. "If we fight back, they'll dig deeper into my past. I've got nothing to hide, but it's not pretty." Nathan looked at her, his eyes steady. "Your past is why you're here. It's why the kids trust you. Let's use that." Emily nodded, her silver hair catching the light. "The kids' voices could shift this. Show the world what the Haven does." Lena thought of Zoe and Mia's drawings, Jade's sketches, the stories etched in crayon and pain. "Okay," she said, "but we do it our way. No polished press release. We let the kids speak." The press conference was set for the next day at the Haven. A small stage erected in the courtyard under a canopy of string lights. Lena spent the morning preparing with the kids, not scripting their words but helping them find them. Zoe and Mia, shy but determined, wanted to share their drawings. Jade, skeptical at first, agreed to speak, her voice raw but resolute. Lena stood with them as reporters gathered, cameras flashing like vultures circling. Nathan stood beside her, his presence a quiet anchor. Jade stepped to the microphone first, her shaved head gleaming under the lights, a sketchbook clutched to her chest. "My name's Jade Carter," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I've been in foster care since I was 8. 10 homes. None of them mine. People called me trouble, said I'd never fit. Then I came here." She held up a drawing, a bird breaking free from chains, its wings flecked with gold. "Miss Lena didn't fix me. She saw me. She stayed. This place isn't just a building. It's where I learned I'm not broken." The crowd was silent, then a ripple of applause grew. Zoe and Mia went next, holding up their drawing of Lena under the stormy sky. "She's our safe shadow," Zoe said, her voice small but clear. Mia added, "She makes the bad dreams go away." Lena's eyes burned, but she kept her composure, stepping forward to speak. "I don't have a degree," she said, meeting the cameras head-on. "I have a life foster homes, loss, learning to stand up again. That's what I bring to these kids. Not answers, but presence. If you want to question that, question why we let kids feel invisible in the first place." The reporters erupted with questions, but the tide had shifted. The kids' voices, their art, had cut through the noise. Behind the scenes, Nathan's team worked fast. Marcus filed a countersuit against Marshall Tech, exposing the forged document as a deliberate plant. Sarah coordinated with local agencies to verify the Havens records, ensuring every form was airtight. By evening, social media was ablaze with Jade's drawing, shared under hashtags like #HavenHeals and #CUs. Lena sat in the Havens art room, exhausted but resolute, when Jade slipped in, her sketchbook under her arm. "They listened," Jade said, almost surprised. Lena smiled, her voice soft. "They saw you. That's what matters." Jade hesitated, then handed her a new drawing, a tree with roots deep in the ground, its branches reaching toward a starry sky. "For you," she said. Lena took it, her fingers brushing the page. "This is us," she said, and Jade nodded, a rare smile breaking through. But the fight wasn't over. That night, Lena found Nathan in his office, a laptop open to a blog post accusing the Haven of exploiting vulnerable children for publicity. Victor's fingerprints were all over it, though his name was nowhere. Nathan looked up, his face weary but determined. "He's not stopping," he said. "But neither are we." Lena nodded, her mind racing. "We need to go bigger," she said. "Not just defend the Haven, but build something unstoppable. A foundation. Not just here, but everywhere kids need it. Nathan leaned back, his eyes searching hers. You're talking about a legacy. Lena met his gaze. I'm talking about the kids who don't have a Lena yet. He nodded, a spark of something new in his expression. Admiration, maybe. Or partnership. Let's do it, he said. The Carter Caldwell Foundation. You lead, I'll fund it. Lena felt a weight lift, not fully but enough to breathe. She thought of Jade, Zoe, Mia, and even Tara, who'd left a voicemail that morning, asking to meet again. The storms weren't over, but Lena was learning to stand in them, not alone but with the family she was building, one choice at a time. Outside, the city hummed, its lights steady against the night. The Haven's courtyard was quiet now, the stage dismantled. But the string lights still glowed, casting soft shadows on the murals. Lena stepped outside, her breath visible in the cool air. She pulled the letter from her pocket, its words, "She's not who she seems," fading in her mind. She was exactly who she seemed. A woman who'd survived, who stayed, who saw, and that was enough to keep fighting. The Tacoma sky was a soft wash of lavender and gold, the kind of spring evening that made the world feel like it was holding its breath. The Carter Caldwell Youth Haven's second location stood proudly on a quiet street, its brick facade adorned with hand-painted signs reading, "Hope grows here and second chances live." Lena Carter stood in the courtyard, her braids loose around her shoulders, a clipboard in hand as she oversaw the final preparations for the grand opening. It had been a year since the smear campaign that nearly derailed the original Haven in Seattle. A year since Jade's voice and Zoe and Mia's drawings turned the tide. Now, the Haven was more than a dream. It was a movement, with a second site, a growing staff, and a partnership with Yale to train social workers in their model of trauma-informed care. Lena's heart was full, but it carried scars, each one a reminder of the storm she'd weathered: Nathan's slap, Tara's return, Victor Marshall's lies. Those battles had forged her, not into someone unbreakable but into someone who knew how to mend. Zoe and Mia, now 7, darted through the crowd, their laughter bright as they handed out paper flowers they'd made with Jade. Nathan Caldwell stood nearby, no longer the distant tycoon but a father who showed up, his sleeves rolled up as he helped set up tables. Lena caught his eye, and he gave her a nod, a quiet promise that they were in this together. The courtyard buzzed with life. Local families, social workers, volunteers, and kids from both havens mingled under strings of fairy lights. Jade, now 17, and a mentor at the Seattle site, was directing a group of teens as they hung a mural on the main wall. A tree with golden cracks running through its trunk, its branches heavy with leaves shaped like hands. Zoe and Mia had helped paint it, their small fingerprints visible in the gold. Lena walked over, her sneakers soft on the grass. "This is something else," she said, her voice warm. Jade grinned, a rare softness in her usually guarded expression. The twins said, "It's our family tree, cracks and all." Lena's throat tightened. She thought of her own cracks foster homes that left her feeling like a ghost, a sister who vanished, a father she'd never known. Yet here she was, surrounded by a family she'd chosen, one that had chosen her back. Zoe tugged at her hand, pulling her toward the mural. "Look, Miss Lena. We put you in the middle." There, at the tree's heart, was a figure with braids, arms outstretched, holding up the branches. Mia pointed to a small bird above it. "That's Jade," she said, her voice stronger now, no longer a whisper. Lena knelt, pulling them both into a hug. "You girls are gonna make me cry," she said, laughing through the ache in her chest. The ceremony began as the sun dipped lower, casting golden lines across the crowd. Nathan stepped to a small podium, his presence steady but unassuming. "A year ago," he said, his voice clear, "I didn't know what healing looked like. I thought it was control, fixing things with money or plans. But Lena Carter showed me it's about showing up, every day, even when it's hard." He looked at her, his eyes soft. "This haven isn't mine. It's hers, and it's theirs." He gestured to the kids. because they're the ones who make it real. The crowd applauded, and Lena felt a flush of pride. Not for herself, but for the kids who'd trusted her to stay. Jade spoke next, her voice steady now, no longer trembling. I used to think I was too much, too angry, too broken. But this place, these people, showed me I'm just right. I'm here because someone saw me. Now I get to see others. She held up a new drawing, a bird soaring over a city, its wings flecked with gold. The crowd cheered, and Zoe and Mia waved their paper flowers, their faces bright with pride. After the speeches, Lena wandered through the crowd, greeting parents and social workers. Tara approached, hesitant, a tray of lemonade in her hands. Their reconciliation had been slow, built on small moments, coffee dates, late-night calls, stories of their childhood that didn't end in pain. Tara had moved to Seattle 6 months ago, taking a job at a local library, trying to be the sister she hadn't been. You did this, Tara said, her voice quiet. Lena shook her head. We did this. You're here now. Tara's eyes watered, and she set the tray down, pulling Lena into a hug. I'm trying, she whispered. Lena nodded, her hand resting on Tara's back. I know. Keep trying. They stood there, the weight of years softening, not gone but lighter, like a wound finally scabbing over. As the evening unfolded, the kids led a garden planting activity, a tradition Lena had started at the Seattle Haven. Zoe and Mia handed out small pots filled with marigold seeds, their faces serious as they explained how to care for them. Lena knelt beside them, her hands in the soil, guiding a young boy named Eli, a new arrival with wary eyes. You gotta talk to them, she said, pressing a seed into the dirt. Plants listen, even when they don't answer. Eli nodded, mimicking her movements, his small hands steadying. Nathan joined them, his jeans streaked with dirt, a rare sight for a man who once lived in suits. You're good at this, he said, his voice low. Lena smirked. Dirt's honest, it doesn't lie. He laughed. And for a moment, the world felt simple soil. Seeds. Kids. The promise of growth. But the simplicity didn't erase the past. Later, as the crowd thinned, Lena found herself in the Haven's quiet library, a cozy room filled with books and beanbags. Jade was there, flipping through a sketchbook, her fingers tracing a drawing of a cracked vase, its seams glowing gold. Kintsugi, Jade said, catching Lena's eye. You told me about it once. Broken things made stronger. Lena sat beside her, her heart full. You're stronger, she said. Jade shrugged, but her smile was real. Because you stayed. Lena's eyes burned. And she thought of the letter from a year ago. The one that tried to unravel her. She's not who she seems. She'd proved it wrong. Not by hiding her past, but by owning it. Every foster home. Every night she'd cried herself to sleep. Every time she'd chosen to stand up again. That strength was in Jade now, in Zoe and Mia, in the Haven itself. Nathan found her as the stars began to speckle the sky, the courtyard empty except for a few volunteers cleaning up. He held a folder, his expression serious but warm. I've been talking to the board, he said. We want to start a scholarship for kids like Jade, to go to college, trade school, whatever they dream of. We want to name it after you. Lena blinked, caught off guard. Nathan, that's too much. He shook his head. It's not enough. You changed everything for the girls, for me, for all of us. Lena looked away, her gaze settling on the mural, its golden cracks catching the light. Okay, she said finally, but only if the kids get to help choose who gets it. They know what it means to fight for a future. Nathan nodded, a smile breaking through. Deal. The twins found them then, their hands sticky from lemonade, their eyes bright with exhaustion. Miss Lena, look. Mia held up a paper flower, now crumpled but still vibrant. Zoe tugged at Lena's sleeve. Can we plant something for you? Lena knelt, her heart swelling. Let's do it now, she said. They led her to a corner of the garden, where a small plot waited, the soil soft and ready. Nathan handed her a sapling, its roots wrapped in burlap. "A cedar," he said. "Strong, like you." Lena laughed, shaking her head, but she took the sapling, her hand steady as she pressed it into the earth. Zoe and Mia sprinkled marigold seeds around it, their giggles mixing with the night air. Jade joined them, adding a small stone painted gold. "For the cracks," she said, her voice quiet but sure. Lena looked at them, her family, not by blood but by choice, and felt something settle inside her. Something sacred, like a root taking hold. That night, back at the Seattle mansion, Lena tucked the twins into bed, their room now filled with drawings and paper flowers. She hummed the lullaby she'd taught them, its melody weaving through the quiet. Nathan stood in the doorway, watching, his face softer than she'd ever seen it. "You're their home," he said, his voice low. Lena paused, her hand resting on Mia's curls. "They're mine too," she said. She stepped into the hallway, Nathan following, and they stood under the glow of a nursery lamp. "I was thinking," he said, hesitant, "about what you said, about building something unstoppable. I want to make it official, not just a foundation, but a family. Legal guardianship. For you and the girls." Lena's breath caught. She hadn't expected this, hadn't dared to hope for it. "Nathan. That's..." She trailed off, her eyes searching his. "It's what they deserve," he said. "Permanence. And so do you." Lena nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's do it." They sat on the back porch later, the sound shimmering under the moon. Tara joined them, her presence still new but steady, a work in progress. Lena handed her a cup of tea, their fingers brushing, a small gesture that felt like a bridge. The twins' laughter echoed from upstairs, where Jade was reading them a bedtime story, her voice carrying through the open window. Lena leaned back, her gaze on the stars. She thought of the cedar sapling, its roots sinking deep, its branches reaching high. Healing wasn't about erasing the cracks hers, the girls', Jade's, even Nathan's. It was about filling them with gold, letting them shine as part of the story. She hummed softly, the lullaby blending with the night. And Zoe's voice joined in from upstairs, faint but clear. Mia followed, then Jade, their voices weaving together, a song of staying, of building, of flying. Lena closed her eyes, her heart full, not because the storms were gone, but because she'd learned to stand in them, surrounded by the family she'd grown, rooted and soaring all at once.